The first thing Nora Bellamy said after moving into my spare bedroom was, "My brother told me you were single." But he forgot to mention I'd be living with someone this attractive. Grant was halfway down the stairs. I stood in the kitchen holding 2 bottles of water, wondering whether I had heard her correctly or whether 3 hours of hauling boxes had damaged my brain. Nora just smiled, took 1 bottle, and opened it as she had commented on the weather. I was 29, she was 25. She was not the teenager I remembered stealing fries from Grant and me after football games. She had a graduate school schedule taped to my refrigerator, a job interview Monday, and enough confidence to make my carefully organized life feel unstable. The problem was simple. Grant had been my closest friend for 12 years. He trusted me enough to let his little sister live under my roof. And on her first night there, I realized that trust was about to become much more complicated. "Did you just call me attractive?" I asked. Nora leaned one hip against the kitchen island. Her dark hair was still tied up from moving, and a few loose strands had fallen around her face. She wore jeans, white sneakers, and an oversized University of Washington sweatshirt she had bought that afternoon, even though orientation did not start until Tuesday. I did on purpose. "That's usually how compliments work." I stared at her. She laughed. "Weston, relax, I'm not proposing. That is not the part I'm worried about." "Ah." My brother, exactly. Grant and I had met during our freshman year at Washington State, survived bad apartments, worse jobs, 2 cross-country road trips, and the year his father had a heart attack. He was the kind of friend who had once driven 4 hours in the middle of the night because I called him after my engagement ended and admitted I did not want to be alone. So when he asked whether Nora could stay with me for 1 semester while she started her master's program in urban planning, I said yes before he finished the question. Her original apartment had fallen through after a pipe burst in the building 3 weeks before classes. Campus housing had a wait list. Short-term rentals in Seattle cost more than some mortgages. I had a 2-bedroom townhouse in Wallingford, 10 minutes from campus by bus, and I lived alone. To Grant, the solution had been obvious. To me, it had been harmless. That was before Nora walked through my front door. "I'm serious," she said, still studying me. "You look terrified." "I'm not terrified." "You're holding an unopened bottle of water like you're about to negotiate a hostage release." I looked down. She was right. I set it on the counter. "Better? A little. Good." "House rules." She raised both eyebrows. "Already? You're the one who made it weird." I made it honest. "That might be worse." She laughed again, and the sound hit me harder than it should have. I pulled a notepad from the drawer because I had actually written down the important things. Parking permit, trash day, Wi-Fi password, the upstairs shower handle that needed to be turned farther left than seemed reasonable. The ancient smoke detector that sometimes chirped if the toaster was feeling ambitious. Nora watched me list them with increasing amusement. "You made me an orientation packet. It's 1 page. You laminated the emergency contacts. I own a laminator. That might be the least attractive thing about you." I pointed at her. "There, see." Problem solved. No, she took the paper from me, still attractive. I should have changed the subject. Instead, I smiled. That was my first mistake. The second was noticing the way she smiled back. Grant came back through the front door before either of us said anything else, carrying a floor lamp under one arm. "You two arguing already?" he asked. "Weston has rules," Nora said. Grant snorted. "Of course he does. I have 5 rules. He alphabetizes spices," Grant told her. "I do not." "You absolutely do, only by category." Nora looked delighted. "This is going to be fun." Grant dropped the lamp in the living room and pointed at me. "Take care of her." Nora's expression changed instantly. "I'm standing right here. I know, I'm 25, I also know. I have lived alone for 3 years, and yet you called me last week because you thought your car was making a dangerous noise. It was making a dangerous noise. It was your turn signal." I tried not to laugh. Nora looked at me. "Do not encourage him. I'm neutral." "No, you're not. You're already smiling." Grant clapped a hand on my shoulder. "See, she's your problem now." The words were a joke, but something about them bothered me. Nora caught it too. "I'm nobody's problem," she said. Grant softened. "You know what I mean." "I do," but her voice had gone flatter. An hour later, after Grant left for the 2-hour drive back to Tacoma, Nora and I stood on the front porch, watching his truck disappear down the street. The late August air was warm by Seattle standards, and the neighborhood was unusually quiet. Somewhere behind the row of townhouses, someone was grilling. A dog barked twice and stopped. Nora folded her arms. You know, you don't actually have to take care of me. I know, do you? Yes, she turned toward me. Because Grant does that thing where he asks people to look after me as if I'm still 16. He worries. He worries by assigning me supervisors. I don't want to be your supervisor. Good. I also don't want to be murdered by your brother. That earned a reluctant smile. He wouldn't murder you. You sound uncertain. I'm deciding whether he'd make it look like an accident. Comforting. She leaned against the porch rail and looked out at the street. For the first time all evening, she seemed less playful. I almost didn't come to Seattle, she said. That surprised me. Why? She shrugged. Long story. You're living here for 4 months. We have time. Her eyes moved to mine. Something shifted. Not romance exactly. Not yet. Trust maybe. Then she smiled and stepped toward the door. Careful, Weston. About what? You keep saying things that sound like you want to know me. I do know you. No, she opened the door. You know Grant's little sister. Then she walked inside. I stayed on the porch for another few seconds because I knew she was right, and that bothered me more than the compliment had. The version of Nora in my head was outdated by nearly a decade. I remembered braces, soccer cleats, and a loud 18-year-old who had once threatened to tell my date embarrassing stories if I did not buy her dessert. But the woman unpacking books in my spare room had spent 3 years working for a transportation nonprofit in Portland. She had applied to graduate school without telling her family until she was accepted. She wanted to redesign public spaces in neighborhoods that had been ignored by city planners for decades. I learned all of that over takeout Thai food that first night. I also learned she hated cilantro, loved old black and white movies, and had recently broken up with someone she refused to discuss. I did not ask, not then. At 11:00, she carried her empty bowl to the sink. Thanks for letting me stay here. You already thanked me. I know, I'm doing it again. You're welcome, she hesitated. And for not treating me like I'm 12. I gave you a laminated emergency sheet. That was close. I laughed. She headed toward the stairs, then stopped on the first step. Oh, and Weston, yeah, her eyes held mine. I meant what I said earlier. What part? She smiled. The attractive part. Then she went upstairs. I stood alone in my kitchen for a long time after that, and for the first time since agreeing to let her move in, I wondered whether 4 months could be a very long time. The next morning I woke at 6:15 to the smell of coffee. That should not have been remarkable. I made coffee every morning. The remarkable part was that someone else had made it before me. I found Nora sitting cross-legged on one of my kitchen stools, laptop open, hair twisted into a messy knot. She was wearing running shorts, a gray t-shirt, and the expression of someone who had already been awake long enough to make 3 decisions I would regret hearing about. She held up a mug. I guessed black, you guessed right, I know. Grant told me, your brother has apparently provided a disturbing amount of intelligence. He gave me a full briefing. I took the mug and sat across from her. Should I be concerned? He said, you're reliable, annoyingly responsible, emotionally constipated, and you make excellent pancakes. I almost choked on the coffee. He did not say emotionally constipated. He used the phrase not great at talking about feelings. I translated, that is not the same thing. It is in younger sister English. I shook my head. She smiled at her screen. What are you working on? A mapping exercise for orientation. Orientation has homework. Graduate school has a sense of humor. She turned the laptop toward me. It showed a map of North Seattle covered in colored routes and notes. We have to pick a neighborhood and identify a planning problem people deal with every day. I looked more closely. You chose Aurora, part of it. Traffic, pedestrian access, bus stops, lighting, crossings, the things people only notice when they don't work. She said it with an energy I had not heard the night before. I worked in commercial construction management. My job was mostly schedules, budgets, permits, and convincing subcontractors that next week was not a legally binding unit of time. I knew enough about city planning to understand how frustrating it could be. You really love this, she glanced at me. Is that surprising? No, I just never heard you talk about it before. You never asked. There was no accusation in the words, which somehow made them land harder. I thought about every holiday dinner over the years when Nora had been at the same table. I had asked how work was going. She had said fine. I had accepted fine because that was what people did when they believed they already knew someone. What made you choose it? I asked. She studied my face, maybe checking whether the question was real. Then she answered. Her first job after college had been at a nonprofit that helped seniors and low-income residents navigate transportation changes in Portland. She had spent months listening to people describe what happened when a bus route disappeared or a crosswalk felt unsafe after dark. A 10-minute planning decision could turn into an extra hour in someone's day. I like the part where you could fix something people had learned to tolerate, she said. That sounds cheesy. It doesn't. It sounds a little cheesy. I work with concrete. My emotional vocabulary is limited. There's Grant's briefing again. I smiled into my coffee. By 7:30, I had to leave for a job site in Bellevue. Nora had an orientation event at 10:00. And as I reached for my keys, she said, "Do you know if the 44 bus is reliable?" Usually sounds suspicious. It's Seattle. The traffic gets a vote. She nodded. I took 3 steps toward the door, stopped, then turned around. "I can drop you near campus. You don't have to, I know. Bellevue is the other direction. Only at first. That sentence makes no geographic sense. I'm trying to be nice. You're bad at it." "I'm excellent at it. I'm just not used to being interrogated." She closed her laptop. "Fine, but I'm buying breakfast. I already had coffee. Coffee isn't breakfast. That is an offensive statement in this city." 20 minutes later, we were standing in a bakery near campus, while Nora argued that a blueberry scone counted as breakfast, and I argued that it was cake with plausible deniability. She bought me one anyway. On the drive, she asked about my job, not the polite version, the real version. What projects did I like? Why had I stayed with the same company for 6 years? Did I ever want to build something for myself instead of somebody else? That last question sat with me after she got out of the truck. I had once planned to start a small residential building company with my former fiancée, Vanessa. I handled construction. She handled design. We had gone as far as drafting a business plan before our relationship ended. Afterward, I stayed at the firm where I already worked. Safe job, good pay, predictable life. I had not thought of that choice as fear until Nora asked me why I had made it. By Friday, our routines had formed without either of us discussing them. I left first most mornings. Nora usually returned home before I did. She studied at the kitchen island because she said the spare room desk faced a wall and made her feel like she was being punished. Some nights we ate separately. Some nights one of us cooked. On Thursday, she attempted pasta and set off the smoke alarm. "That was not the pasta," she said while I stood on a chair waving a dish towel beneath the detector. "The pan is smoking. The pan is expressing itself. The pan needs therapy. You're being dramatic. The neighbors can smell your dinner. They're welcome." I looked down at her. She was laughing so hard she had to grab the counter. Something in my chest tightened. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, because the townhouse had been quiet for almost 2 years. I had convinced myself I liked it that way. Suddenly there were shoes by the front door that were not mine. Half-finished notes on the refrigerator, music playing upstairs while someone got ready in the morning, a second coffee mug in the sink. Life had entered the rooms without asking permission. I was beginning to understand how empty they had been before. On Saturday morning, Nora knocked on my bedroom door at 8. I opened it wearing sweatpants and one sock. She looked me over. Strong start. "What happened? I need your truck." "No, you don't know why. You opened with 'I need your truck.' The answer is no. I found a desk. You have a desk. I hate that desk. You've lived here 6 days, and I have hated it consistently." I folded my arms. "Where is this superior desk?" "Ballard." "How big?" "Normal desk size." "That is not a measurement." She held up her phone. The desk was solid oak and looked like it had survived 2 wars. "That thing weighs 200 lb. 140, you asked. I'm responsible. You're trying to manipulate me with competence. Is it working?" It was. An hour later, we were in Ballard hauling the desk down a narrow staircase, while the seller, a cheerful retired teacher named Diane, gave useless instructions from above. "Watch the corner," Diane called. "There are 6 corners," I shouted back. Nora, below me on the stairs, started laughing. "Do not laugh while holding furniture. That makes it funnier, Nora. I'm holding it." At the landing, the desk jammed. I shifted my grip. She shifted hers. The desk moved suddenly, and Nora lost her footing. I dropped my end enough to grab her around the waist. For 1 second, everything stopped. Her hands were braced against my chest. My arm was around her. We were close enough that I could see the tiny gold flecks in her brown eyes. "You okay?" I asked. Her voice came out quieter. "Yeah." Neither of us moved. Then Diane shouted, "Did somebody die?" Nora closed her eyes. I laughed despite myself. "No," I called. "We're good." I let go of Nora. She took one step back. The air between us did not return to normal, not immediately. We finished moving the desk without speaking much. Once it was strapped into the bed of my truck, Nora bought us tacos from a food truck across the street. We sat on the tailgate to eat. She nudged my knee with hers. "Thanks for almost killing us with furniture. For coming, you knew I would." She looked at me. Yeah, there was something unexpectedly serious in the answer. I took a bite of my taco to avoid responding too quickly. After a moment, she said, "That's one of the dangerous things about you." I looked over. My furniture-moving skills, reliability. That's dangerous when you're used to people promising things and not showing up. The way she said it told me the sentence was not really about furniture. I remembered the breakup she had refused to discuss. I could have asked. I wanted to, but she had not offered the rest, and I did not want to turn trust into an interrogation. So I said, "I'm glad you knew I'd come." She looked down at the wrapper in her hands, then she smiled. "See, emotionally constipated but trainable." I laughed. She leaned her shoulder into mine for half a second. It was nothing. It felt like something. That evening, Grant called while Nora was upstairs assembling a shelf. I answered from the kitchen. "How's my favorite tenant?" he asked. "She almost crushed me with an antique desk. So she's settling in. You knew she was buying that thing. She sent me the listing, and you didn't stop her." "You're the construction guy. That is not how friendship works." He laughed, then his tone shifted. "Seriously though, everything good?" "Yeah, she okay?" "I think so." "You think? She's 25, Grant. I'm not doing room inspections." I know. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Just keep an eye on her." "All right." Portland was rough at the end. There it was. "What happened?" "You should ask her." "That sounds ominous." "It wasn't anything dangerous." "Her ex was just a lot." "A lot how?" Grant exhaled. "Controlling, maybe not in some dramatic movie way. He just had opinions about everything she did, where she worked, whether grad school was practical, who she spent time with. By the end, she was asking permission to make decisions that were hers." My grip tightened around the phone. "Did he hurt her?" "No, nothing like that. But he made her doubt herself, and I hated watching it." I looked toward the stairs. "Does she know you told me?" "No." "Then you probably shouldn't have." "I know, Weston. I'm worried about her. She doesn't need another man making decisions for her because he's worried." Silence. Then Grant said, "That sounded weirdly specific." I rubbed a hand over my face. "Living with her for a week has been educational." He laughed softly. "Yeah, she has that effect." A floorboard creaked upstairs. I lowered my voice. "I'm not going to supervise her. I'm not asking you to. You literally did." "Fine, fair." He paused again. "Just be her friend." I could do that. At least that was what I told myself. Then Nora came downstairs wearing one of my old college t-shirts. I had given it to her earlier because she had gotten paint on hers while fixing the desk. It hung loose on her shoulders. She saw me looking. "What?" I looked away too fast. "Nothing." Her eyes narrowed. Grant's voice came through the phone. "Is that Nora?" She walked over and took the phone from my hand. "Your surveillance operation has been compromised," she said. I watched her argue affectionately with her brother for 5 minutes. And while I listened, one uncomfortable thought became impossible to ignore. Being her friend was already getting harder than it should have been. 2 weeks passed before the first real problem arrived. It came disguised as a perfectly normal Sunday dinner. Grant was in Seattle for work on Monday, so he drove up a day early and stopped by my place with pizza and beer. Nora had spent most of the afternoon in the dining room with tracing paper, colored pencils, and 3 classmates on a video call preparing a neighborhood redesign proposal. By 6, she shut her laptop and dropped into the chair beside me. "If anyone says multimodal corridor tonight, I'm leaving." Grant handed her a slice of pizza. "Graduate school treating you well. It's trying to kill me." "Good builds character." She gave him a look. "You sound 80. We ate, traded stories, and for a while everything felt easy. Then Grant noticed the oak desk through the open spare room door. "You bought that monster," Nora smiled. "Weston helped me move it." Grant looked at me. "You're spoiling her already. It was a desk, not a yacht." "I'm just saying." He pointed his beer bottle at me. "Careful, man. She'll have you doing everything for her if you let her." Nora's smile disappeared. "Can we not do this?" Grant blinked. "Do what?" "Talk about me like I'm a problem you hand off." "That's not what I meant. You say it constantly." He frowned. "Nora, I know you're joking." "That doesn't make it less annoying." The room went quiet. I could feel the old sibling pattern forming. Grant was trying to protect her, Nora trying to prove she did not need protecting. Both of them hearing years of history in every sentence. Grant looked at me as if asking for help. I did the one thing I knew Nora would respect. I stayed out of it. She handled it herself. I love you, she told him, calmer now, but I moved here for school, not because I needed a new guardian. Weston is letting me stay in his house. He isn't responsible for me. Grant looked genuinely embarrassed. You're right, she waited. I'm sorry. Her shoulders loosened. Thank you, he nodded. Then, because Grant had never survived sincerity for more than 30 seconds, he looked at me and said, still, hands off my sister. He laughed. I did too, automatically. Nora did not. Her eyes met mine. It lasted maybe 1 second, but I knew immediately that I had failed some test I had not realized I was taking. She stood. I'm going back to work. Nora, I'm fine. She carried her plate to the kitchen and went upstairs. Grant looked at me. What? I stared at him. You really had to say that. It was a joke. After she just told you she hates being treated like she belongs to somebody. His face changed. Damn, yeah, he rubbed the back of his neck. I'm an idiot, sometimes. You laughed. I know, that was the part that bothered me. Later, after Grant left, I found Nora on the back patio with her laptop closed beside her. I opened the sliding door. Can I come out? It's your patio. That's not an answer. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. I sat in the chair across from her. I'm sorry, for what? For laughing. She looked toward the fence. It wasn't your joke. I still laughed. You and Grant have had the same dynamic forever. That doesn't make it good. She pulled her knees up slightly and wrapped her arms around them. I know he loves me. I know he'd do anything for me. But sometimes being loved by somebody who thinks they know what's best for you can feel a lot like being managed. I heard Grant's description of her ex in my head. I chose my next words carefully. Is that what happened in Portland? Her eyes snapped to mine. I immediately regretted it. Grant told you. A little, she stood. Of course he did. Nora, no, it's fine. It doesn't look fine. He tells you I had a controlling boyfriend, asks you to keep an eye on me. And suddenly everybody gets to understand me before I've said anything. I told him he shouldn't have, but you still know. Yes, she picked up her laptop. I stood too. I'm not going to use it against you. That's not the point. I know. No, you don't. Her voice was not loud. That made it worse. The point is that I came here because I wanted one place where nobody had already decided what version of me they were going to deal with. I did understand then. Or enough to know that defending myself would only make it about me. So I stepped aside. You're right, she paused. I should have let you tell me when you wanted to. Some of the anger left her face. I'm not mad at you for knowing. I know. I'm mad that everyone keeps deciding what I need. I won't, she gave a tired laugh. Everyone promised that. I can promise to ask. That made her look at me again. I held her gaze. Do you want me to leave you alone right now? She considered it. No, so I sat back down. She did too. For 10 minutes, neither of us talked about Portland. We talked about her project. That was how Nora eventually told me everything. Not because I pushed, but because I waited. Her ex's name was Preston. They had dated for almost 2 years. He was smart, successful, and according to Nora, very good at making control sound like concern. He questioned whether the nonprofit job was ambitious enough. Then he questioned whether graduate school was worth the debt. When she applied anyway, he asked why she had not discussed it with him first. It was never one huge thing, she said. That's what made it hard to explain. Every argument sounded reasonable by itself. What ended it? I got into Washington, and he told me if I moved to Seattle, I was choosing school over us. I felt anger rise in me. But I kept it out of my voice. What did you say? I said yes. I smiled before I could stop myself. She noticed. What? That was a good answer. She smiled too. I thought so. A few seconds passed. Then she said, but after 2 years of somebody questioning every decision, you start hearing their voice even when they're not there. That's the part I hate. I nodded. I get that, you do. My ex-fiancé didn't control me. Nothing like that. But when she left, she told me I was good at building everybody else's plans and terrible at making my own. Nora was quiet. That's harsh. The annoying part is that she wasn't completely wrong. I told her about the company Vanessa, and I had planned to start. About how, after the engagement ended, I buried the idea with the relationship because separating the two felt impossible. You still want it? Nora asked. I don't know. That means yes. That is not how questions work. It is when you answer them like that. I laughed. She leaned back in her chair. What would you build? Small houses, renovations, additions, places people actually live in. My company does hotels and offices, big budgets, big schedules. Half the time I never meet the people who use what we build. So why don't you start a company? Risk, money, timing, sanity. She nodded solemnly. All terrible reasons. They are excellent reasons. They're responsible reasons. Exactly. That wasn't a compliment. I looked at her. She smiled. You know what your problem is. I suspect you're going to tell me. You think being careful and being honest are the same thing. The sentence landed with uncomfortable precision. Before I could answer, she stood. I have class at 8. That is a cowardly exit. I learned from the best. She walked toward the sliding door, then stopped beside me. Thank you for asking what I wanted. I looked up. Anytime. Her expression softened. Then she went inside. I sat in the dark for another 5 minutes thinking about what she had said. Being careful and being honest are not the same thing. At the time, I thought she was talking about my career. 3 days later, I learned she was not. It happened at a small bar near campus after her cohort finished a presentation. Nora had texted around 5. We survived. Drinks at Fremont Brewing. You're invited if you promise not to ask what a multimodal corridor is. I stared at the message for longer than necessary. Then I went. Her classmates were easy to like. Priya was sharp and funny. Tobias talked with his hands and apparently never stopped. Callum, a former civil engineer, spent 10 minutes complaining about zoning codes before realizing I worked in construction and apologizing. Nora sat beside me at the end of the table, not across from me, beside me, close enough that our knees touched twice. Neither of us moved away the second time. I was halfway through a beer when Priya smiled at Nora. So this is Weston. The emphasis on my name made me suspicious. Nora groaned. Priya, what? You talk about him. I looked at Nora. She looked at her drink. That sounds incriminating. It is, Priya said. Nora kicked her under the table. Priya laughed. Then Tobias, who had clearly missed the warning signs, asked, Are you two together? The table went strangely quiet. Nora looked at me. There are moments where a person has exactly enough time to make one good decision or one bad one. I made the bad one. No, I said too quickly. She's my best friend's little sister. The second the words left my mouth, I wanted them back. Nora's face changed, not dramatically. That would have been easier. She just looked away. Right, she said. Priya immediately changed the subject. The conversation continued, but the warmth between Nora and me disappeared. On the drive home, she stared out the passenger window. I lasted 6 blocks. I said that badly. You said it accurately. That's not what I meant. You're Grant's best friend. I'm his little sister. You're also Nora. She gave a short laugh. Strong recovery. I'm serious. So am I. I pulled up at a red light and looked at her. Are you mad? No, that sounded like a lie. I'm not mad. I'm embarrassed. Why? She turned toward me. Because apparently I've been imagining this. This, she gestured between us. The light changed. The driver behind me honked. I pulled through the intersection and found a side street, then parked. Nora stared at me. What are you doing? Not having this conversation while driving. That's extremely on brand. Nora, she looked down. I know I flirted the first night. I know I've flirted since then. I thought you were flirting back. I was. Every instinct in me told me to say it. Instead, I thought about Grant. 12 years of friendship, his trust, Nora living in my house, the possibility that even if she wanted something now, the situation itself made everything complicated, so I reached for caution. I don't think anything should happen while you're living with me. Nora went completely still. It was a reasonable sentence. It was also the wrong one. Because of Grant, partly, of course, and because you're staying in my house. I pay rent, barely. Her eyes flashed. That was a joke, bad time. You're right, sorry. She opened the door. Where are you going? Home. We're 12 blocks away. I know how sidewalks work. Nora, don't. She stopped with one foot outside. Don't what? Walk away angry. I told you I'm not angry. Embarrassed, then she turned back. I'm embarrassed because I thought you saw me as a woman you liked. And apparently you see me as a situation you have to manage carefully. That's not fair. No, I do like you. The words came out before I could stop them. Silence. Nora's eyes searched my face. Then her voice softened. How much? I had no safe answer, so I said the least useful one. Enough that I think we need boundaries. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Oh wow, I'm trying to do the right thing. For who? That stopped me. She waited. For Grant, I said nothing. For me, still nothing. Or for you? I looked away. Nora nodded slowly. That's what I thought. She closed the door again, but she did not sit back comfortably. Drive home, Weston. We did. When we reached the townhouse, she went upstairs without saying good night. And for the first time since she moved in, the house felt quieter with her inside it than it had when I lived alone. For the next week, Nora and I became experts at being polite. Good morning. Do you need the washer? I'm ordering dinner. Want anything? The words were normal. That was the problem. Nothing else was. She stopped studying at the kitchen island and worked in her room instead. We no longer argued about breakfast. She took the bus, even on mornings when I was already driving toward campus. When I came home late, the lights upstairs were usually on, but the living room stayed empty. I told myself this was what I had wanted, boundaries. It felt terrible. On Thursday, I found an envelope on the counter with Nora's name on it and the university housing logo in the corner. I did not open it. I did not need to. She came downstairs while I was cooking. Your mail, she said. She saw the envelope. Oh, that one syllable made my stomach drop. You applied for housing. A studio opened near campus. When, yesterday, I turned off the burner. You're moving out, I might, because of what happened. She met my eyes. Because living here is starting to feel unfair to both of us. I never asked you to leave. I know. Then don't. The words came out sharper than I intended. Nora folded her arms. Why? Because I missed her. Because I hated eating breakfast alone when she was one floor away. Because every time I heard the front door, some part of me hoped she would walk into the room and tease me about something pointless. Because the safe, responsible solution had made me miserable. I could not say any of that while still pretending the problem was Grant. I don't want you making a decision because I handled one conversation badly. She looked disappointed. Still careful? What does that mean? It means you keep explaining why I shouldn't leave without telling me why you want me to stay. I opened my mouth. Nothing came. She nodded. The studio is available next month. Then she took the envelope upstairs. That night, I called Grant. Not because I needed permission, but because I finally understood that if I kept blaming our friendship for my fear, I was going to damage both relationships. He answered on the third ring. What's up? I like your sister. Silence. You called me at 10:40 at night to tell me that. I'm serious. So am I. I've been waiting for this call. I stared at the wall. What? Grant laughed. Weston. You alphabetized the drinks in your fridge before she moved in. That proves nothing. You drove to Ballard for a desk. She needed a truck. You hate Ballard parking. Everyone hates Ballard parking, and last weekend she called Mom and spent 20 minutes complaining that you were being an idiot. I closed my eyes. She told your mom. She tells Mom everything. This family is a nightmare. Grant laughed harder. Then his voice softened. Do you want my blessing? No. Good answer. I want to know whether this ruins something between us. That depends on what. Do you respect her? Yes. Do you understand that she makes her own choices? Yes. Are you going to treat her like some temporary thing because you're scared I'll be uncomfortable? I said nothing. Grant sighed. That's what you're doing, isn't it? Apparently. Then stop making me the excuse. I sat down. You told me hands off. I was being an idiot. Nora explained that very clearly. She explained it to me too. Runs in the family. I laughed despite myself. Grant went quiet for a second. Look, if you hurt her, I'll be angry because I'm her brother. If she hurts you, I'll probably be angry because you're my friend. That's life. But I'm not choosing who either of you gets to love. Something in my chest loosened. Thanks. Don't thank me. Go fix it. The next day, Nora had her midterm studio review. She had mentioned it weeks earlier, back when we still talked about everything. Her team was presenting a redesigned proposal for a dangerous pedestrian corridor near Aurora Avenue. The review was open to students, faculty, and community partners. I had promised I would come. After our argument, she had never mentioned it again. At 5:30, I left work early and drove to campus. I stood in the back of the room while Nora presented. She did not see me at first. She stood beside a wall covered in maps and renderings, explaining how small changes lighting, curb extensions, safer crossings, bus stop placement could make a street usable for people who had learned to avoid it. She was calm, precise, and completely in command of the room. I remembered Grant asking me to take care of her. The idea suddenly seemed ridiculous. Nora did not need somebody to manage her life. She needed people who saw what she was building and chose to stand beside her. Halfway through the presentation, her eyes moved toward the back. She saw me. Her words paused for maybe half a beat. Then she kept going, but something in her expression changed. Afterward, I waited outside. Students spilled through the doors around me. Nora finally appeared carrying a cardboard presentation tube. She stopped when she saw me. "You came. I said I would." Her mouth tightened. "You also said a lot of other things." "I know." She started walking. I fell into step beside her. "I talked to Grant." She stopped. Her expression hardened. "Why? Not for permission." "Then why?" "Because I realized I was hiding behind him." She said nothing. "I kept telling myself I was protecting our friendship or protecting you from an awkward living situation. Some of that was real. Most of it was fear." Nora's grip loosened on the tube. I continued. "You asked why I wanted you to stay." Her eyes held mine. "Here's the honest answer. I want you to stay because the house feels better when you're in it. I want you at the kitchen island making fun of my coffee. I want to hear about the projects that make you angry and the streets you want to fix. I want to help move ridiculous furniture even though I hate parking in Ballard." A small smile appeared. I stepped closer, but not close enough to touch her. "And I like you. Not because you're Grant's sister, not despite it. I like you because you're Nora." I should have said that the first time. She looked down for a moment. "What did Grant say? That if I used him as an excuse again, I was an idiot." "That sounds right. He also said you complained to your mom about me." Her eyes widened. "He told you that your family has no confidentiality standards." She laughed. The sound broke the last of the tension. Then she became serious again. "I'm still taking the studio." My heart dropped. She saw it. "I don't want us to start something while I'm dependent on your spare room." She said, "You were right about one thing. I want to know that if this works, it's because we chose it freely." I nodded. "That's fair. And I want my own place." "That's also fair." She studied me. "You're taking this surprisingly well. I'm trying something new where I listen when you tell me what you want. Promising development." I smiled. "So what does that mean for us?" She stepped closer. "It means I move out next month." "Okay. And until then, you stop pretending you don't want to kiss me." My heartbeat kicked. "Nora, what?" "I'm listening very carefully." "Good." She reached up, caught the front of my jacket, and kissed me. It was not dramatic. No crowd cheered. No music started. Nobody dropped anything in the background. It was better than that. It was warm, deliberate, and completely mutual. When we pulled apart, her forehead rested lightly against mine. "You are unbelievably bad at this," she whispered. "At kissing?" "No," she smiled. "At pretending." A month later, I helped Nora carry that impossible oak desk into her new studio apartment. This time we hired 2 movers. I had learned something. Grant came too, mostly to criticize my knot-tying technique and eat the pizza Nora bought afterward. At one point he looked from me to Nora, then shook his head. "I leave you 2 alone for 1 semester." Nora pointed at him. "No jokes about handing me off." He raised both hands. "Retired forever." She smiled and hugged him. That evening, after Grant left, Nora and I returned to my townhouse for dinner. She still had a key, not because she lived there anymore, but because she wanted one. We ended up in the kitchen, almost exactly where we had stood her first night. She leaned against the island. "You know," she said, "my brother forgot to mention something else." I smiled. "What now?" "That you're terrible at hiding when you like someone." "I hid it for weeks." "You failed for weeks." "That is different." She walked around the island and put her arms around my neck. "I'm glad you failed." So was I. 3 months later, I filed the paperwork for a small residential construction company I had talked about starting for years. Nora did not push me into it. She did something better. She kept asking what I wanted until I stopped answering with what felt safest. And when she finished her first semester, I sat in the front row of her final presentation. Not because her brother had asked me to look after her, because I was her boyfriend, because she had chosen me. And because I had finally learned that loving someone was not the same as protecting them from every risk. Sometimes love meant respecting their choices, making your own, and being brave enough to meet in the middle. When feelings become complicated, is protecting the relationship worth staying silent? Or does real love begin the moment you finally tell the truth?